Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. I'm very excited for this one. It's been in the works for months and I'm so excited to finally get to it because it's near and dear to my heart. But I'm going to do an author spotlight on Darcy Coates. I love Darcy Coates. She is like my queen. So I have a lot that I owe this author, so that will become apparent as we talk. So I've been a fan of Darcy Coates for many, many years, back when she was an indie author just self-publishing on Amazon. And I discovered her one day when I was just scrolling around on Amazon and I just happened to see one of her books. And that book was The Haunting of Blackwood House. And I was like, oh, I love ghost stories. I love haunted house stories. That sounds really interesting. So I went ahead and bought a copy of it, and I absolutely loved it. I devoured it. I thought it was so good. And so then I noticed that she had written quite a few other books. And so I went and searched for all of them and got all the ones I could get my hands on. So I'm going to go ahead and show you which ones she had out when she was self-publishing. She also had The Haunting of Ashburn House and The House Next Door and The Haunting of Gillespie House. And then she had a duology, which is called The House of Shadows and House of Secrets. This one is set in a different time period. This is like Crimson Peak, which is why I really liked it, because I really like Crimson Peak. So if you are a fan of that movie, then I think you would enjoy these ones. And then we also have Hunted. This is their first one that wasn't a supernatural story. This is actually more of a thriller. And then she had a short story collection called Quarter to Midnight. And then we have Ghost Camera and Dead Lake. So when these ones came in the mail, I was kind of really disappointed because I didn't know they were novellas. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't really know what a novella was. And so when these came in the mail and they were like $15 and they came and they were so short, I was like so disappointed because not only was it a lot of money, but at the same time, I just wanted it to be longer because I love her stories. And I was like, oh no, they're so short, I won't be able to enjoy it as long. But these both ended up being so fantastic, so I don't really mind because they're two of my favorites of hers. So not only did I not know what a novella was back then, but I also didn't know that horror was for adults, which I know sounds so stupid. I knew about Stephen King, of course, and I knew people liked him, but outside of him, I didn't hardly ever hear anybody talking about horror or talking about adults reading horror. And so I had read horror growing up here and there, but it was all for kids, it was all Goosebumps and Fear Street and Bunnicula and, or the odd ghost story that I would come across. But I didn't know that adults read horror until I discovered Darcy Coates. And I started rooting around and I discovered some other indie authors that I really enjoyed, like Amy Cross and Ambrose Simpson. But yeah, she's the one that really got me to realize that adults read horror. I was subscribed to her newsletter for many, many years, and then in one of these newsletters, she had like a book trailer that was made by Harpies in the Trees about a new book that was coming out. And so from that, I discovered Harpies in the Trees. And up until then, I didn't know about BookTube. I didn't know that was a thing. I've never heard of BookTube before. And so discovering Darcy Coates and then discovering BookTube and Instagram and discovering all these other horror lovers, it opened up this entire new genre for me, and it was so exciting. So like the last few years, I've just been gobbling up as much horror as I could possibly get my hands on because I just didn't know that the genre existed, to be honest. And so I'm trying desperately to catch up. But it's been a blast and I've really enjoyed it. So outside of that, Darcy Coates, I owe her a lot because back when she was self-publishing, when she wasn't so busy and famous and all this stuff, she was like me because I was also a self-published author at the time. I was actually publishing my Cavalcade series. So this is a YA fantasy, and I was right in the middle of doing this, and I was like, you know what? I have her Darcy Coates' email, and I was really nervous and scared, but I'm like, I'm just going to ask her some questions because it was hard figuring out how to publish for the first time on my own. And there were certain questions I had about like getting ISBN numbers and copyrights and just some of the nitty-gritty parts of publishing for yourself for the first time. And I was like, she's been through this process. She knows what's going on. Maybe I'll just email her and maybe, just maybe, she'll actually respond. And she did. And I was so excited because this author that I was so enamored with actually emailed me back and she helped me publish my books. And I was just so thrilled and so amazed by her. And I know she's very shy and introverted like myself, and she has a hard time getting up in front of people and talking. And, I just really related to her, and she was such a good writer. And I was just so giddy at the fact that she would help little humble old me. So that was really exciting. So then, come to find out through her newsletters that she's had like what, 15 books by this time published or something. Maybe not that many, but she had quite a few books out. And so people were starting to notice her, and they kept going to this bookstore in Australia where Darcy lives. She lives in Australia. And they kept asking the guy that works at this bookstore for Darcy Coates books. And he's like, I don't know this author. I've never heard of her. We don't have her books. So after he kept getting all of these patrons asking for her books, he contacted Darcy and was like, hey, we want to stock some of your books in our bookstores. So from there, she got picked up by a publisher called Black Owl Books. And under them, she published The Fullcroft Ghosts, The Haunting of Rookwood House, Craven Manor, and The Carol Hunt. So then from there, as she got bigger and bigger and more well-known, she got picked up by a bigger publisher, and she's now signed with Poison Pen Press. They kept the same covers, but they kind of revamped them a little bit. And then when she had short ones, like her Dead Lake and Ghost Camera and that, they've added other stories to the end of them to make them thicker so they're not just little novellas. And I thought that was pretty cool. And speaking of which, Ghost Camera is actually coming out again in July. And then she's written all new short stories to go along with it. So I've already pre-ordered that. Even though I already have a copy of Ghost Camera, I wanted to read the other short stories because as of right now, I've read every single thing she's ever written, including her short stories that come with the newsletters and everything else that she's written. So anyway, so I just want to, continue to have read everything from her. So I'm getting Ghost Camera so that I can read those short stories that came with it. But anyways, so she got picked up by Poison Pen Press, and from there she published a couple of series. This starts with the Black Winter series, starting with Voices in the Snow, and then Secrets in the Dark. I'm not really sure who did these covers because there's like a baby doll head and like Whispers in the Mist, which has like a necklace, and then you have Silence in the Woods that has a butterfly, and none of that has anything to do with the book. So I don't know why they chose to have that on the covers, Like, if I saw this in the store, I'd be like, oh, it's about an evil doll. But it's not. Not at all. This is more of like a zombie book. They're not zombies. They're called the Hollows, but they're zombie-like. So yeah, nothing to do with dolls. And then her other series that she's written with them is the Gravekeeper series, starting with The Whispering Dead, and then The Ravenous Dead, then The Twisted Dead, and The Hollow Dead. And then she also wrote The Haunting of Lee Harker, From Below, Gallows Hill, Dead of Winter. And then her most recent new release is called Where He Can't Find You. This is by Fire Reads because this is a YA novel. This is the first YA novel that she's written. Although Fullcroft Ghosts, I feel like could have been YA because it's from the perspective of teenagers and it kind of read YA. But according to Darcy Coates, this is her first YA, so I'm going to go with that. Actually, you know what? It's not her most recent release. Sorry. The Hollow Dead is her last release. This one just came out a couple months ago. So never mind. Just to help you on your journey with Darcy Coates, she does primarily write books with good, happy endings, which I really appreciate. Because even though it's horror, I do like, good triumphing over evil, and I do like walking away and not being so depressed all the time. But that's kind of what I love about the horror genre is it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up what you're gonna get. Is it gonna be a happy ending or is it gonna be a devastating ending? And you don't really get that with any other genre because they all have happy endings, or at least bittersweet, you know? But with horror, you kind of like, it's more like on the edge of your seat because you honestly don't know if you're gonna get a good ending or not. So I do love and appreciate that. People call Darcy Coates cozy, and I do agree with that to an extent. But to be honest, she can write some pretty chilling, scary scenes, in my opinion. And it could have been because I was new to the horror genre and I haven't read very many haunted house books at the time. And so that could have been part of it. But it also could be because I predominantly read them in a bathtub with the lights off with candles around to kind of set the mood. But for whatever reason, she honestly has scared me with some of her older books. She's a little bit more cozy nowadays, I feel, now that she's more mainstream. But some of her old stuff, I think she had some pretty chilling scenes, and she's a very good author at writing atmosphere. Like, her books are so atmospheric, and that's my favorite part about stories about ghosts and haunted houses is the setting and is the atmosphere. And she's very good at that. And she's very good at getting me to connect with her characters right away. I don't know how she does it, but she always manages to make me care about them. Okay, so now that I've given you a little bit of backstory about Darcy Coates, I'm going to go ahead and go through all of her books and rank them from my, I don't know if I should do least to favorite or favorite to least. Let's start out with the favorites. So I'm going to go ahead and rank them, and I will show you which ones I prefer, which isn't always going to be what you prefer. And I'll let you know what all these books, like what genre that they would fit into, so that you can decide for yourself what you would want to read, since she has quite an extensive backlist. So I'm not going to include her short story collections. She has this one, Quarter to Midnight, and then she has another one, but I only have the ebook version of that one. It's like 50 Tales of Terror or something. They're like extremely short. They're like 2 to 3 pages. But because they're short story collections, I don't think I'm going to include it because it's hard to rank something like that because they're all different. So just be aware of this, but I'm not going to rank it. Okay, so this was extremely hard to put these in order because some of them I love equally, and so it's really hard to judge, but I did my best. So I definitely have a preference for supernatural haunted house ghost story type books. That's just kind of my jam. I just really like that kind of story. So a lot of those ones are going to be at the front. But first we have The House Next Door, and I loved this book. I thought it was so, so good. And I thought it was so interesting because the haunted house is not the one that she's living in. It's her next door neighbor's house that's haunted. And I thought that was really cool and unique. So this one was a lot of fun. And then these ones are kind of neck and neck. We have Dead Lake and Ghost Camera. I equally loved both of these. I'd maybe go for Dead Lake a teeny tiny bit over this one. And that's purely based on the setting. Being out in the woods was very atmospheric and very creepy. But yes, I loved both of these ones. And this one's a little bit more supernatural, and this one's a little bit more thrillery. And then we have The Haunting of Ashburn House. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun, and it had a unique ending that I haven't seen in a haunted house book, so that was exciting. And then we have Voices in the Snow. I love this series. I thought it was so well done and so good. And there's a bit of romance in this one, and I freaking loved it. I mean, it doesn't take over the story. It's not a romance novel, so don't get afraid to read it because of that, because it's very much a subplot, but it's a subplot that I loved. I love these characters so much, and I love this storyline so much. And if you have not checked it out, I would highly recommend you do so. So I especially love the atmosphere in this very first novel. And I mean, I don't know, I might have spoiled it by saying it was kind of a zombie story because you're not really supposed to know that until the end of this book. So I apologize for that, but I feel like you should know that going in because people that don't like that kind of story, I don't want them to get to the end and be like, what? This sucks. This is stupid. So I wanted you to go in with the right expectations. But yeah, this is a fantastic series. I loved it so, so much. Then we have The Haunting of Blackwood House. This will always have a special place in my heart because it's the first book I ever read from her. So I'll always have good feelings towards it because of that. And this is another haunted house story. And then this one's The Haunting of I can't say that. Rookwood House. Rookwood House. Still can't say it. Anyways, this is also a haunted house story, but it has a twist at the end that I really enjoyed, and I thought it was really fun. This is the first one that she wrote that was from a man's perspective instead of a woman's, so that was interesting. Then we have The Carrow Haunt, and I was pleasantly surprised by this one because a lot of her other haunted house ghost stories, you basically had the main character and she spent a lot of time alone, and you had a few like little characters here and there, but by and large she was by herself. So this one was the first one where there was like a whole host of other characters, and so it was really fun to see how Darcy handled having more than one character. So that was really exciting and fun, and I love the setting of this one. This is about a girl who she's like a curator, not a curator, what do they call it? Like she runs a museum. She's like the host or whatever, and she gives tours for this museum. But then her and some patrons get stuck there during a storm and supernatural things start to happen. But it was a lot of fun. And I just love this cover. And I just love this. It's at the front of every chapter. I don't know why, but I just love it. I can't really explain why I like it, but it kind of added to the gothicness, and I just thought it was really cute, and I don't know. And then we have Dead of Winter, and this one is not a haunted house book at all. This is more of a slasher. Some people call it a thriller, but I would call it a slasher. But a lot of the kills are off screen though, which is probably why they call it a thriller. Some of them are on the page, but a lot of them aren't. So I guess be aware of that. But at the same time, I just thought it was very fast paced and it was very thrilling. It was very fun. And some people thought it was obvious who the killer was. I did not. I kind of feel like I should have at the end, but for whatever reason, I was just along for the ride and I just didn't even think. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. She pulled a fast one on me. But anyways, I thought this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one, and I loved the isolated snowy setting. Then we have Craven Manor. This is a haunted house book, but it always has like some fantastical elements, which I don't normally like, but for me it worked in this one and I really enjoyed it. And this is again a perspective from a man, which was kind of interesting, but I really enjoyed the setting of this one and I enjoyed the characters. Then we have her duology. This is again, like I said before, I like Crimson Peak, where this woman falls in love with this guy that she just barely met and they get married like right away and she goes to live at his manor. But then, there's creepy, eerie things that start to happen. But yeah, this is set in a different time period. It's like the 1800s or something. But I really enjoyed this duology. I thought it was a lot of fun. The ending wasn't quite my favorite, but I really enjoyed the ride. Then we have The Haunting of Gillespie House, which is another haunted house book, very short. Then we have the Gravekeeper series, starting with Whispering Dead. And I'll be honest, when I first started reading this, it was almost a little too cozy for me, and I wasn't sure I was going to like it. But the characters really grew on me, and I really loved the second book in the series. And so I really became invested in these characters and in the story. And so it kind of was a series that grew on me. But yeah, I'll be honest, when I first started it, I was like, that's a little too cozy. But I mean, it would have been good if I was using it as like a palate cleanser or something. But yeah, I really do like this one. But it was kind of an acquired taste. And then we have Gallows Hill. Again, I really enjoyed these characters and I really enjoyed the story. And it was nice to go back to having a haunted house book because up until then, she was kind of straying into thrillers and underwater things and slashers and all this other stuff. But I was like, go back to being haunted. So I was excited that this was more of a haunted house tale and it was very unique and I enjoyed some of the imagery in this. Then we have the Fullcroft Ghosts, and this is the one that I thought kind of read like YA, and it is from the perspective of kids, but she doesn't classify it as YA, so I don't know. But anyways, it's about a teenage girl and her brother that go to live with their grandparents after their parents die in a car crash, and then eerie, creepy things happen. If you've watched The Visit by M. Night Shyamalan, it gives me those vibes. So if you liked that movie, then I think you would like this one. And I did enjoy this one a lot. I really did. But at the same time, I don't know, I had a hard time connecting it like I did to her other haunted house books. And so I did enjoy it, but it wasn't like my absolute favorite, but I would recommend it. Okay, then we have From Below. And this one I kind of had mixed feelings on because normally Darcy Coates can make me instantly connect with her characters. Like I'm just instantly invested in them. But I had a hard time with her characters in this one. They felt very flat and one dimensional, and I just couldn't relate to them. I couldn't connect to them. I don't really know why that was, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into the characters. And there was certain parts of this book that kind of felt slower and more meandering. But then at the same time, it had some great scenes with some great imagery and was very eerie. And being underwater just makes me claustrophobic, anyways. And I thought it was a unique book. And so I would still recommend this. It's just not like my absolute favorite from hers, but I did really enjoy it. And then we have The Haunting of Lee Harker. This is another haunted house book. And this one did have a twist, but I saw the twist coming, and so it didn't like surprise me or anything. And again, I wasn't like completely enamored with the characters for whatever reason, but I did still enjoy it. I thought it was really good, and I would recommend this. But honestly, I would just recommend anything by Darcy Coates. So take that for what you will. Then we have Hunted, and this one's definitely more of a thriller. And I struggled with this one at first. Like the first half, I was struggling. I could not connect to the characters. Half the book is told by teenage kids, and I could not stand them. They were very unlikable and annoying, but maybe that wasn't done on purpose so that when they died, we didn't care about them. I don't know. And then, like, I had a perspective from, I don't know what she was, like a deputy sheriff or maybe she was the sheriff or just a cop. I'm not really sure. I read this a really, really long time ago. I'm talking like 10 years ago. So I don't remember what she was. But anyway, I just really struggled with the first half. But then as soon as I got clicked into the story, then all of a sudden I just like flew through it. And I loved the second half of this book, but I had a hard time getting into it at first. I think part of it too was I just got so used to her supernatural stories because this one was written back when she was self-publishing, and pretty much all of her stories were haunted house supernatural stories. And so this is the first one that wasn't, and I think I was disappointed by that because I didn't know that. And so I was like, well, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I wanted. And so that probably made me a little bit biased against it. But yeah, I thought the second half was strong and I enjoyed the second half, but I had a hard time getting started with this one. And then the Where He Can't Find You. This one, unfortunately, I knew going into my rankings that this was instantly going to be on the bottom. I don't know, it didn't quite work for me. It had some scenes that were really good and very eerie and well written, but I didn't connect to any of the characters at all. And the beginning felt kind of weird, like almost dystopian in a way. And I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite from hers. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. This was probably a 3-star read for me. So I knew this one was going to be on the bottom. This is me in the future. It wasn't until I was editing this video that I realized I completely forgot one of Darcy's books. I have it shelved with my science fiction books, not my Darcy Coates books, so that's how I missed it. So I apologize, I completely blanked it. But there's one more I need to talk about. It's called Parasite. And this is a sci-fi horror book. And as far as my ranking, I'd probably put it somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not my absolute favorite, but I did really enjoy it. This is definitely more of a plot-driven book than a character-driven book. So just be aware of that. We're jumping in like all over the place because it doesn't just have one timeline or one person. It has a lot of characters in it, and it will like jump around to different characters. So just be aware of that going into it. It can be a little bit off-putting at first, but this, if you can't tell from the title, is about an alien race that kind of is a parasite. So basically this woman, she's, well, not just her, but her and her team. I don't remember all the details. I don't know if they're on an asteroid or on a different planet. Maybe they're on the moon. I don't remember where they are. Could even be a space station, but I don't think so. Anyways, I don't remember where the setting is. I'm so sorry. But they discover an alien race that takes over your body and takes over your mind and then goes after everybody else that's around you. And it does this over and over and over again. And we get to see that happening for lots of different people and lots of different places. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It was a little bit hard to get into because you jump to so many different perspectives and different characters. But once you got kind of once you knew what it was and you could get into the pacing of it, then I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well written and was really fun. And there's not a whole lot of science fiction horror out there. And so I thought this was a pretty decent one. So, anyway, sorry I forgot. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. There you have it. That's all the books from Darcy Coates. I hope you found some books that might intrigue you that you might want to check out. I know she's got a lot of books, so I hope this helped. I couldn't give a synopsis on every single book or else we'd be here forever, but hopefully it did help, at least letting you know which ones are supernatural stories and which ones aren't. So if you have any extra questions for me about her or her books, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know, and I will definitely answer you and try to help you. Hopefully this guide helped you find your next Darcy Coates book and maybe helps you find a new author if you haven't tried her out yet. So please leave me a like. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss a video from me. And I will catch you guys next time. See ya!